Alright, so literally everyone in their extended family has been asking me to make this video. I mean, I literally see it in every single video comment. I see it on stream, which, by the way, is your call to come out to the streams, which is linked down in the description down below. We stream every weekday over on Twitch. Come out to that. But yeah, even on stream, I'm pretty sure I saw the comment of being like, hey, where is the CE tier list video? Like, where is that on a Yu-Gi-Oh video? Like, something that's not even related to FGO at all. So alright guys, here you go. Here's your CE tier list video. We'll go over it in today's video. Now, you may be wondering, why are there only like 10 CEs down there at the bottom? Why is there not like 800 million of them? Because most CEs are similar enough that like I'm not gonna sit here and be like, well, this one gives 50% and like 2 stars every turn, but this one gives 50% and 3 stars every turn. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and do that and be here for like 8 hours. Like, I know that's what probably some people wanted, but unfortunately I have stuff that I have to do in my day. Like, I have class to go to and I have other videos to record. I got to stream. So like, we don't have the time for that. So basically, a lot of these CEs here are going to be placeholders for other CEs. For instance, like some of these free-to-play CEs are going to be like, these all do somewhat different things as free-to-play CEs. They kind of serve the same niche. Like, this is like, oh, it's like a 50% in like a card buff and an NP buff. This is like a 50% in some NP gain. This is like 50% in some crit damage. Like, they're all relatively the same, so they kind of represent similar CEs and stuff like that. So with all that being said, let's just go ahead and get right into this. Now, first and foremost, this really shouldn't surprise anybody, but K-Scope 1 and K-Scope 2 are the best 2 CEs in the game. Why? Because fundamentally in FGO, what are you trying to do? You are trying to always fire your NP. It doesn't matter if you're a support type servant, if you're a DPS servant, even someone like Super Orion who just does damage with his face cards. All of those characters want to hit their NP as often as they possibly can, because that's pretty much what you want to do. That's like the name of the game is spamming your NP, right? That's why Scotty and Castoria and Koyanskaya are so good, because they allow you to spam your NP. I think the only servant in the game that doesn't really want to hit their NP is like Saber Giles, and that probably explains why Saber Giles is so bad. So yeah, the reason this one is just above this one is that K-Scope number 1 gives you attack, K-Scope number 2 gives you HP, and HP is not as valuable as having a 2k attack buff, because this is probably going to make you get one shot. This is going to let you one shot people. So that's pretty much the basis for that. Then we can move into Imaginary Element. That's because this gives you 60% at the start of the battle, and then if you max limit break it, which is a bit easier to do because 1, this actually goes on raid up during the Nemo event, so you can easily catch a lot of these CEs, but also 2, when you max limit break it, you get 75%, so you're just 5% off of a actual just normal K-Scope. So it's kind of like the general gist for like the tier list is that like, for a lot of these CEs, their power is coming from how much NP they can start you off with, and that's actually why some of these other ones over here that I'll separate, these are all like more distinct CEs that they don't give you any starter charge CE, but they give you a very powerful effect because they don't give you any NP at the start of battle. Now, from here, you can pretty much just have all of the 50% CEs. It doesn't really matter how you particularly rate these ones. I kind of like would rate it somewhere along like that, probably somewhere like this. This is literally just 10% more than this, but it's just like, honestly, I had to bring it up because even though this is just literally 10% NP gain better than this CE, if I don't bring up Magical Grill of Sapphire, people are going to riot. There's also the fact that you have to max limit break this one because Magical Grill of Sapphire starts you at like 40% non-limit broken, and then you have to max limit break it to 50%. So it's like, technically it is better if you can max limit break it, but it's a limited 5-star CE, so it's kind of hard for you to do. Whereas this is a free-to-play CE that gives you 50% and 20% NP gain, whereas this one gives you 30%. So it's like, this is easier to get, but it's not quite as good as the ceiling of what Magical Grill of Sapphire has, but technically Sapphire is better. And then we come down to these two. Really just a lot of these are just like kind of the bread and butter for a lot of people's teams. Like these like CEs, like the Dive to Blue or the Sakura one, like all of the ones that give you like 50% starting charge CE, some type of card buff, and then either NP damage, some type of like star regeneration buff or crit damage, something along those lines. That's like the bread and butter for a lot of CEs. And then this would probably be just a little bit better because this is a little more generic. It just lets you do big boy damage, like you just get to smack people in the face. Obviously, a lot of those will be determined based on if they're going to be giving you attack or HP, because obviously the ones that give you attack are going to be a lot better than the ones that are going to give you HP, because obviously the point of the game is really not to stall. You're trying to absolutely obliterate everybody in the game. So yeah, the ones that give you attack would obviously rank a little bit higher, but hopefully that just kind of gives you guys a really good like basis for how a lot of this stuff is going to work. But yeah, then we can kind of move into these more interesting ones. Now, I only have Herc's Bond one here because this is like one that needs to be mentioned because Herc's Bond CE is so good that it's a meme. If you're not aware of what it does, it literally just gives you 3 guts, right? Like it gives your Herc 3 extra lives, which with his newest buff, or in the JP version of the game, every time he pops a guts, he actually gets stronger. Like he gets a buster buff. So it's like Herc's actually a little nutty with this. Like it was already really good for being able to solo things, right? But now that he has like that to actually further increase his damage, it just kind of makes Herc a little nutty. Like it just makes him pretty giga broken. So it's very hard to rank in terms of how good it is. Like if you're just looking at the effect of the CE, it's probably like somewhere up here. Like for not getting any start of charge, the fact that you're getting triple guts and you can combine it with like his skill to make it even stronger, it makes it really, really strong. But even if you just look at it, just the raw effect, getting 3 instances of guts is really, really strong. I might also maybe bump that one here because this one is like generic. Like the reason I'm ranking this one a bit higher, but for people that missed it, is that this one's generic. It just gives you crit damage, NP damage, and 50%, whereas this is tied to specific card types and everything. Like these are the card type specific ones, so a little more restrictive. This one's really good for boss setups, but it's like you're really only using it if you're gonna fight a boss, where this is pretty flexible. You can use this in like farming or in boss setups. Same for like this one, but I don't know. This is just really, really strong. So then we have the other ones down here. Now I don't really think I actually need not K-Scope 3 because I don't think any of them are that bad. So that's actually stuff for like Black Grail comes in handy because Black Grail makes you pretty broken. It basically makes any of your servants have the Oberon buff. If you guys don't know, Oberon's 3rd skill basically turns any servant you have into a giga NP damage nuke. You start doing just obscene amounts of damage that you should not be able to do without like event CEs. So it's pretty broken, and this CE does that. It actually can be used in like Castoria setups because Castoria can give you a free 100% and it gives you insane looping potential. It actually can be like, hey, do you only have like NP1 Summer Melt Lilith, right? So you don't have technically enough damage to get enough NP back for your loops. You can slap this on there and you will have enough damage, right? You will have more than enough damage, and because you're doing more damage, you're getting more overkill, and thus you're looping a lot more NP. This is like secretly the best CE for art setups, right? Because you can pretty much guarantee that you're going to obliterate everybody in your path, and then at the same time you're also looping more NP as well. It's also really insane for like the what's it called, the Koyenskaya setups in a lot of scenarios. Like if you need to just slam dunk somebody for a boss battle and you're using like Koyenskaya, Oberon, and then you have this CE on any of your buster servants, whoever you're fighting is going to need to say their prayers because they're about to get launched into lower Earth orbit and get obliterated. Like they are going to die because that is way too much damage that should not be allowed in this game. And then God forbid you slap this on like a Siegfried with a Romulus Boudica setup, and that's just a wrap. Okay, they're just doing way too much damage. But yeah, it's up here because you're not getting any start of charge CE, which again, we've established is pretty much like one of the most important things in FGO. It's like the main striving factor, but it gives you something that is definitely well worth the exchange. Same thing for something like 2030. Now, 2030 is a bit weirder because I was running into this problem when I was thinking about the CEs to put in here, is that I was like looking at stuff like 2030 that are clearly good skills. Like I think there's also Macrocosmos as well, the CE that lets you get like 15% or no 10% NP every single turn, just as 2030 lets you get 10 stars every single turn. They're both utility-based CEs that you're not really putting on your main damage dealing servants, you're actually putting them on your support type servants, because it's either, do I want my support type servant to spam their NP more, or do I want my support servant to pretty much invalidate the need for a quick card? Because if you guys were not playing FGO back in the day, 2030 basically killed all of the quick cards, right? Because you would just get a friend like Waver with 2030, or later on you would get your Merlin friend when he came out, but you would get one of them, you get your support type servant with 2030, and you would gen enough stars between both 2030s, especially if they happen to be max limit broken, and then your own Brave Chains, that you really didn't need to bring star gens in your setups anymore, because we're going back to the wild west of FGO. Team building used to look a lot different. You would have like your Jack or your Hassan of the Cursed Arm, somebody to gen you stars, your main Buster or Art Servant, and then like a Waver or something. Like, you would have a guy that could gen stars, a guy that could do damage and suck up those stars, and then someone that could kind of give everybody else NP, because FGO was just a terrible game at the time. It was just an absolute nonsense to play through. Right? I mean, I guess you could still do that. It's not very good. But yeah, when 2030 came out, it was like game breaking, because it allowed you to just not have to worry about bringing quick servants, and you could actually still do that. It's still very good still to this day. Like, you slap that on a Merlin, you take your Merlin's 5 stars per turn and you make that 15 stars per turn. Or if you get overcharged one Merlin, that goes from 10 stars a turn to 20 stars a turn. You just double the effect of that. So it's a very, very powerful CE that I have no problem basically putting in what is essentially A tier right now. I just think it's funny to be not Cake Scope, because I think these are so much better. But yeah, it definitely deserves its spot up there. Now these are hard to rank, because they don't really do you any good when you're in a battle. But the reason they're useful is because of their out of battle effects. It's very hard to rank these ones, right? Because these all have some in battle effect. These do not. The ones you pick up for the gold Prism stuff. So that's why I was actually, as like a little because I don't want to spoil anything for you guys. I'm over here. We're basically calling it the gold, or I guess we'll just call them the Prism one, because you can buy them with regular Prisms when they first come out. But the Prism CEs, right? Right. The Prism CEs, they function completely differently than a lot of the other CEs, because they don't have the same function as these. Like, these are supposed to make your account quote unquote better, right? Whether it's increasing bond, master EXP, QP drops, none of those things are going to win you a battle, right? Like, just because you got 5% extra bond doesn't mean you win the fight, right? Whereas starting with 50% NP may have won you the fight. Getting those extra stars per turn may have won you the fight. Starting off with an NP right off rip may win you the fight. But these aren't going to win you any fights, right? So it's like, they're in a completely different category, and when you look at CEs that come from the Prism shop, you should rank them differently, right? If you're going to pin me down and ask me which ones do I think are better, like between a lot of the Prism CEs, the ones that give bond or QP are going to be the most important, depending on your view. Now, personally, I think QP is going to be a little bit more important in the short term, but bond is more important in the long term, right? Because bond can eventually give you servant coins to Grail your servants above 100. They will allow you to get the append skills, which the 20% append skill, the second append skill, you guys have heard me talk about at length in a lot of these videos, especially with servants that have like 30% batteries, right? It's a very, very important thing. So getting bond can actually make your servants go from being borderline not able to farm or kind of unplayable to actually being a contender in the meta, right? Like, take for instance someone like Gilgamesh. He has a 30% battery. You wouldn't use him with Koyan Sky at a farm, but because you can give him that 20% append skill, it's still possible for him to farm, because he can at least start off with that cheat 50% battery, right? You can still technically get it off. So you could say that like bond is more important because it has real gameplay effects technically in the future, and it also gives you Saint Quartz back, which Saint Quartz are pretty much like the most valuable resource in the entire game. Although you could also say that you can't really do anything with all of that stuff you acquired. You know, your Saint Quartz don't matter. You can summon all the units in the game you want, but if you don't have any QP to level them up, you're kind of just sitting with a bunch of level 1 servants, right? So like, you can make either argument, right? They're both very, very valuable resources. The Master EXP ones, the Mystic Code EXP ones, not really as important. Like, Master EXP is important early on when you can start raising your level and getting more team costs, but eventually you hit a brick wall, and then the team cost barely even matters, because you're either going to be able to run a full team of like whatever you want, or you're just going to be shy a few points, and you'll level up a little bit and you'll be cleared for it, right? So this is generally what a CE tier list would look like, right? You would have like your very high impact, no starting charge CEs would probably all be up here, like all the high impact. Like I also mentioned, like Prisma Cosmos, right? I believe is the one that also gives the 10% NPA return, stuff like that. Nothing is as good as Kscope because it literally fulfills the most fundamental thing in the game, and that is firing your NP, and it lets you do that immediately, either maximum broken or not, because if it's not maximum broken, you have the 20% starting charge mystic code that you could use, or literally every support in the game gives at least 20% NP, from even Osaka Behemoth Merlin to Castoria having a split between being able to give you 20% and then 30%, so you don't have to waste the first buff, right? Part of the power of her being over Scotty, just saying right there. But yeah, I don't want to start that beef. I don't want to start that beef with people in the comments. But yeah, then this has to be up here because it's literally just baby Kaleidoscope. And then all of the 50% that have pretty decent effects, right? Like all of these are pretty decent. You could somewhat make an argument that maybe this should go down, but that's if you just don't have a fundamental grasp of how important it is to be firing off your NP, especially if you don't have a lot of these like top tier casters and everything, right? It makes CEs like these the most important. Like I feel like that's when you truly start to see, like, look, people ain't like me. They're not like me on the NA version of the game where I ain't got no Scotty. I'm just stuck with Merlin and waivers trying to farm everything. When you're in the mud like that, and you can tell which CEs are the best, right? Like you can tell which ones are getting you through the game and which ones are being overhyped a little bit. Now, not to, for nothing, these are still very good CEs. I use this one in pretty much all of my farming setups, right? Because the extra NP game is absolutely phenomenal, and then on the NA version of the game I use Magical Grove Sapphire when I can. But yeah, I think that should be it for this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Even just by cutting this down to just a few CEs, this was still like what, almost 20 minutes long. So yeah, whoever wanted me to do every single CE in the game, dog, this is a pretty good base. This is a nice shell. Based on everything I've said in this video, you should be able to tell where I would rank other CEs. So there you guys go. I will catch you guys in the next video. Like and subscribe if you enjoy daily FGO content. If there's another tier list you guys want me to make, go ahead and drop that in the comments as well, because I would have never thought to make a CE tier list, but evidently it was something you guys wanted, so I made it. So let me know if there's anything else you want to see in the comments, and I'll go ahead and make that. But yeah, you guys have yourselves a nice day. Peace late, guys.